September 12th, 2022 Superintendent's Workshop. It is 12 noon. I'm calling this meeting to order. This is the Superintendent's Workshop, so at this time I'll turn it over to the Superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we do have a number of items to discuss with the board today. A lot of these items are feedback from discussions during our last board workshop, or our last board business meeting. The first item is an update on the strategic plan. We've had the opportunity to discuss with each board member as well as cabinet and staff regarding updates to the strategic plan based on the recommendations of the board during our last business meeting. And to present those updates will be our Chief of Staff, Dr. Jacobs.
Good afternoon. First, I want to say thank you to all of the board members for the feedback that you provided not only during the workshop, but also during the individual board briefings. You'll see that as we go through the changes and modifications that have been made to the district strategic plan, that they, I believe, serve to enhance the district strategic plan. And I will briefly go through each one of those changes. And if you turn to page 9 in the district strategic plan, do you have? Okay. Okay. So on page 9 is where you'll find the first changes. So at our last workshop, there was a recommendation to include a science achievement target as well as a social studies achievement target. So on page 9 and under the annual targets, you'll see target 1.4 now reads as increased science achievement by 2 percentage points. And then target 1.5 is increased social studies achievement by 2 percentage points. So both of those targets were added into the focus area for academic success. In addition, if you look down at target 1.7, there were questions raised regarding career and technical education and where that appears in our district strategic plan. And you'll see that with regard to high school accelerated performance, we have been capturing that, but we wanted to make it very explicit that high school accelerated performance includes advanced coursework credit as well as career and technical education certification. So that has been added into the parentheses there on target 1.7. Then at the bottom of page 9 for strategy 1.6, we wanted to make really clear the work that's being done currently in the area of career and technical education. And so strategy 1.6 adds expand communication about and opportunities to earn career and technical education certifications. So then on the final revision made based upon feedback, if you turn to page 11, at the top in annual targets, you'll see target 2.1. And the language has been revised to say, ensure that no greater than 15% of students assigned to an alternative to suspension, i.e. their Aspire ALTOS, return to the intervention after initial program participation. So removing the word recidivism and instead including that particular language to clearly define what it is we were measuring. And those are the major revisions. Are there any questions?
I have a question. And I know we went back and forth over this language, and I had a good idea this morning that now I can't remember. Ensure that no greater than 15%, et cetera, return to the intervention after initial participation. Implies that it is only returned to that specific intervention. Is that all we're aiming for here, or are we aiming to decrease return on any disciplinary infraction, right? So if you went, this implies that if you went to Aspire, it's only not going back to Aspire, but not perhaps going to ALTOS or getting additional ODRs. And I'm wondering if we can clarify that.
Sure. So that's a very good question. With regard to the percentage that's here, it combines both of the alternatives to suspension into one percentage. So it's both ALTOS or Aspire. So it's a return to either one of those programs. However, it does not include additional ODRs. And the reason why we selected to measure it in this way was because we wanted to have a focus on our alternative to suspensions program and how effective we were using them and how effective they were for students in general. So we kind of have a laser-like focus on that particular disciplinary consequence.
Which I understand and don't specifically object to in that. But when I read this, I read it as if they went to Aspire, not go back to Aspire. And because it says Aspire or Altos, it says assigned to an alternative to suspension, that is Aspire or Altos, return to the intervention after initial participation. It's not return to an intervention or return to either intervention.
Right, and you're correct in that, and maybe my explanation was not clear enough. It would be a combined percentage of Aspire and Altos, but did they return to Aspire? What percentage returned to Altos, and then combining that percentage together?
Yeah, okay, well, that was clearer than
Okay.
your initial. But I still don't think that's what this says,
Okay,
is the only thing, because this doesn't clarify. And I'm sorry we didn't have this conversation before this moment, because I didn't really realize it. But assigned to an alternative, return to the intervention, it still implies the one that you got assigned to, and unless you're as knowledgeable as you are, it's not clear for somebody reading this what Aspire and Altos are, that you're combining them here, and what the measurement is. So I might be the only one who's that picky about it, but I think we're not being, he gives me a look. But I think we're not being clear here what we mean, and because I think this area is so important and is such an indicator of how well we're doing about keeping students in seats, I think it's important to be clear in the language, and I'm happy to work more on that.
thank you.
I have a suggestion for them, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
May I? I have a suggestion. How about where it says return to the intervention after initial participation? Why not just replace the with any? So return to any intervention after initial participation.
Okay, so would that include, when we look at interventions, we have a very, very long list of interventions. So I think part of the intent was to try to identify whether these particular interventions were effective, but I hear what you're saying
Well,
as
this
far
is
as.
saying Aspire or Altos.
Correct.
So
any.
either Aspire or Altos, so that it would be any or,
I hear what you're saying now. So any meaning either or.
Aspire,
Altos, not
Altos.
any intervention.
right?
In which case, either might be more precise language, since you've specified Altos and Aspire. Return to either intervention, and the either can fairly easily be interpreted to mean Aspire or Altos.
Okay.
What is our objective with this statement?
And then there's that.
I mean, we basically want to reduce students going into these programs. So
Correct.
I think that's the one thing we have to be clear on.
I think through the chair and each board member has, we haven't gotten through one board member without having issues with this statement yet, is to ensure what the behavior that led to the assignment, that the intervention provided, empowers that student with behaviors that, when faced with that same basic scenario, that student makes better choices or decisions. So we are looking at the behavior that led to the quote-unquote discipline, which is in fact is an intervention to ensure that the student doesn't return. That's what we want to evaluate this service that we're providing, reducing or also ultimately empowering the student not to return for that specific behavior. There may be other behaviors that would lead to an assignment. So we will continue to look at it to ensure there's a way that accurately captures, are these interventions that we are very much invested in producing a result that ultimately, as Dr. Schiff just mentioned, keep students in the classroom.
It's fine. Madam Chair?
Oh, yes.
Oh, are we going on to the next one?
Um,
Next point?
Can we?
Did you have something to say here?
No, no.
Okay.
I had no other question. I went through it with them.
Just Dr. Jacobs, we talked about this just for the public to know. Why did we choose the increase by 2 percentage points in science and social studies?
Good question. So when you look at the targets that were set, that is on a summary of those are on page 20. So science achievement pre-pandemic was at 54%. So essentially, the annual target for this year is to return us back to our pre-pandemic levels, so that any of those learning gaps that had developed due to the pandemic are recouped. And the same methodology was used for social studies achievement as well, so that we would be returning to pre-pandemic levels. And then once we gain traction with that, then we move forward to increase those targets even higher.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jacobs. Our next item, once again, based on conversations that we had during our business meeting revolving around policy 2520, we've had the opportunity to debrief as a team, meet with each each school board member to provide additional feedback and clarity, and then to present that policy would be Dr. Shafty, 2520.
Good afternoon. So we will follow the same process that we had the opportunity to discuss with each of you, where we bring up points that we can clarify. We'll have state statute and then our policy to crosswalk it. So the very first item is about the state's adoption cycle or state core approved instructional materials. So some questions that came up had to do with funding. So I have a little bit of information as to why our district's precedent is to align with state-adopted materials. We have to use 50% of the funds allocated to purchase materials on the state-adopted list. In addition to that, funds allocated to purchase those instructional materials, if we veer from the state-adopted list, may not be used to purchase electronic or computer hardware, even if such hardware is bundled with the software or electronic media, and nor can it be allocated for equipment and supplies. So the interpretation on that is we would have to remain fiscally responsible for a bit of materials that are purchased outside of the state-adopted list. So we cover our instructional materials state-adopted in our policy. We also have the definition for non-state-adopted core materials, and the way that we have the language mirrors statute 1006.283. We have the steps listed on the left side of your screen, which we must follow if we have our own instructional materials program, and those steps are mirrored in our policy underneath the section non-state adopted core instructional materials. The next item we have up falls under the evaluation and selection of instructional materials as they apply to textbooks. Our policy is literatum to the state statute, where each reviewer shall maintain those collective norms from the state statute. So when we look at those characteristics, each individual reviewer during the individual review process guarantees an assurance of those qualities to then serve towards the collective recommendation that is presented via the superintendent to the school board. So an individual reviewer with the process we have in place cannot sway or change the process as it's intended to be. And then the final point of clarification has to do with the word each book newly made available to students in the Library Media Center. Beginning January 1st, we have the state's online training, so we wanted to be sure that this process has to do with the books newly made available, as we just adopted a policy for challenges, which will allow that to run its course with our procedure that we have in place should a material be brought forth for challenged purposes. Okay. Questions, feedback?
Mrs. Rosario?
Yeah, thank you for that. One of the things that we are missing are the current books that are sitting on the shelves, minus the challenge process. So putting that aside, part of the charge from the DOE in the letter that was sent to us June or July, I forget exactly when it was, one of those items was to remove books that are out of date, that are out of circulation, books that are not in compliance or that are on the prohibited list of 847, the prohibited items. That's what we're not missing. I mean, that's what we're missing and is not included in this policy. Where are we going to have that? The other part of this is where are we going to add into donations? You know, the vetting of donated books. Those would be new books. So would donations be part of this new process moving forward, or would donations, you know, fall under a different kind of category? So those two items need to be captured somehow, and I'm not seeing that in this.
So we revised on page 4 of the policy. In the yellow text, we have a procedure in there for our library materials. So, and it has in step 1 to make sure that it is in compliance with 1006.40. And then there's a chronological step for our media specialists to follow in order to make sure that the existing collections do in fact meet the intent of statute.
Again, that's newly purchased materials, but that's not the donated materials. Donated materials don't necessarily have to be donated to a library, they could be donated to a classroom.
Yes, but I believe the statute still has that donated materials have to be approved by somebody that holds the educational media certification.
I don't know, I haven't seen that anywhere, that's why I'm asking. It's part of conversations that we've had, but I haven't actually seen it anywhere, so I don't know if anyone here has seen it somewhere. I'm not sure.
May I?
I don't have the
Yes,
answer
ma'am.
to that one.
I did bring this up to a senator-elect last week and asked for guidance on that, and was told that she would help with a call to the DOE to see if we can get further guidance on exactly how that is to be done and give us, I mean, we can't wait until January. And I said that we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because we have a lot of books that are being willing to be donated. We have books that children want to check out, but we're kind of waiting, playing this waiting game. And I asked if we could get some sort of guidance or clarification sooner. So she's going to reach out.
Yeah, that's one of the things that has been an ongoing conversation, but I'm not actually seeing any fruit from that. Yeah. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Mrs. Shattuck.
Not sure if this is working. It looks like at the bottom of page 3 and top of page 4, it addresses donated books and requires them to be approved by a district employee who holds a valid educational media specialist certificate.
Yeah, the clarification, though, of the guidance that I was requesting was the age appropriateness conversation, because what's age appropriate to one person is different than what's age appropriate to another person. So that's the guidance that I've been seeking and asked for specifically of our elected official.
Well, what the part of the conversation now, though, was the vetting of, so we have some library books from some community members who, some books that are being requested to be donated to the district, to schools, and are being told, hold off. And clearly, we're trying to figure out the process for doing that, but at what point do we, remove the hands off and say, okay, now we're going to do this?
Again,
Because we don't, I guess part of the question, as I'm speaking out loud, is maybe we need to figure out if these books are intended to be classroom donations or library donations, or maybe it doesn't even matter.
doesn't matter.
It's just a matter of kind of figuring out, what do we do? Do we want it to be in the same process, or do we want it to be different? I guess that's part of the conversation.
Again, I'm going to go back to, we need clarification and guidance on what's age appropriate. That's the term that's kind of vague, that sits in that policy from the legislators. And I think they all assume everybody thinks the same thing when it comes to age appropriateness, and not everybody does. If you can notice, some parents send their children to R-rated movies and some people don't. So I think that when it comes to this, we need guidance and clarification on what age appropriateness means before we can start doing this. Because I think if we don't do that and we don't wait on this guidance, and hopefully the guidance will come sooner than January, we're going to be in another mess and have to review the books another time.
And through the chair, just to agree with what you're saying, yes, the policy does address purchase, donated, or otherwise made available within the policy. Later in this month, we'll have the opportunity to attend all of the superintendents are coming together, and this is a very specific item in which we're addressing and trying to advocate with the state, Florida Department of Education, who will be there to accelerate guidance from the state. 67 districts are in this conundrum. So we will be able to speak with one loud voice regarding moving this along in order to ultimately implement the policy that will soon to be approved, as well as, have resources available, whether they are new, purchased or donated, available to our students. So we are actively advocating, just as you are.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Shafty. A couple questions. When you developed this draft policy, were media specialists involved with this?
No, not at this time.
Okay. I did have the opportunity to speak with two members from the DOE. First one was Amber Bromback, and then Chancellor Oliva called me back, and I was surprised, but took the time to call me back. Both of them said, all these new state statutes went into effect July. They're going to have more information in October. Both of them said that. So I agree with Ms. Berenborg. I don't want to jump the gun on this too much, and I also think media specialists should be involved, because we want to do it right, and we don't want to do it again. So I know this is just a workshop, and we're looking at this, but I would, look carefully at that before we really adopt. They both said this is new to them. They're looking at things. I had a lot of questions. They just said, I can't answer. One question I did talk to Chancellor Oliva about was instructional materials, and I think we talked about this last time about instructional materials. Not every library book is an instructional material. He said it has to be tied to a learning objective directed by the actual teaching standard. Now, if you have novels in the library that are signed, that's instructional. They're going there just to read a book, and on their own, that is not instructional. So, I was worried about going back over 104,000 books in the secondary. So I would just, this is a workshop where we talk about it. We need more specifics. And they both said, we're going to have more for you in October. So that's my comment on that.
Good to hear.
So, yeah, to follow up on that, just to be abundantly clear, what I think I hear you saying is you would rather hold off on approving this until we have more and clearer direction from the state.
That's what I'm saying, yes. I'm not sure how the superintendent feels about it. Maybe he'll get more specifics at his meeting before then, but, a lot of questions I had, especially for Amber, she just couldn't answer.
So it sounds like you might want to wait to put
No.
this on our
Hold-
agenda.
We're not done.
I'm just making a statement, Mrs. Rosario.
Sounded like you were concluding the.
No, I'm
Okay.
saying, so it sounds like I'm hearing feedback from some of the board members, they don't want to act on this until after we get clearance from DOE on this. On here, this is a policy, I think that would be more the procedure part, wouldn't it? About how to proceed with reviewing books, or as far as the age appropriateness? Or would that be part of the policy?
The way that we've set it with the challenges, we have the procedure embedded in the policy, so if we were going to mirror this, we would want to embed the procedure in the policy as well.
Okay. Mrs. Rosario?
Yeah, one of the things, I'm trying to get the letter. One of the responsibilities of the school board right now with regard to this law beginning or going into effect on July 1st was that the Department of Education was charging us with this implementation, creating this policy and the procedures now, minus the fact, as of July 1st, minus the fact of that training that takes place in January Other than that, everything else is supposed to take place as of July 1st.
Is there a date that says that?
Yeah, it's on the letter.
Well, the date says.
date of
says
the
that
law,
The
and
law
then the-
took place on July 1st. It doesn't say that the policy we create, where does that say that in there, that the policy
Hold on,
by
I'm
the
pulling
school
it
boards
up.
has to be done by July 1st?
Let me pull it up. Gotta get it.
Because if so, they haven't given us enough directive to do that. And I don't want to create a policy that will be against what they finally come out with.
Nor that creates unnecessary work for teachers, media specialists, administrative personnel, and others.
I actually disagree. I think that creating something now gives them something to work with. Because right now, we have a lot of media center specialists who are worried that we're not, and teachers who are not, that we are not allowing students to take out books.
Right.
And that's a concern. So if we just sit on this and do nothing, then no one's going to be able to purchase, no one's going to be able to have any guidance moving forward.
Well, we can't purchase anyway, irrespective of the policy.
That's not true. That's not true.
The purchasing, I understood that we weren't purchasing until guidance and training occurred in beginning potentially, possibly, though not confirmedly, if that's a word, in January from the state. So we were on hold on purchasing until at least January, correct? Is that correct? Did I hear that right?
Through the chair, but we anticipate guidance as early as October, but January is what was initially stated, correct?
Right.
And Dr. Moore, I mean, if a parent gives permission for a student to check out a book, a student can check out a book.
Absolutely, and I think
Right.
those are two independent things. I think the
Right.
conversation here is the addition of materials and resources. And quite honestly, the volume of books that we have available is significant. The inventory that we have in our schools is probably, this is not a vetted statement, but I feel very comfortable saying it, our inventory of books is significantly larger probably than most districts.
That's good.
And really taking the time to look and go through the process. I know Ms. Rosario mentioned a weeding process. Media library specialists, they have that process in place. They go through it each and every single year. And as that guidance becomes available, and they can kind of participate, engage, use their training to determine which books need to stay, go, based on their degrees and their training. So that is another opportunity. So right now, to me, the priority is creating a policy that is in fact accurate, that maximizes the opportunity for our students to engage and connect in our media centers.
And sorry, as I understand it, I know I've spoken to you about this, and I'm hearing now in this meeting that other board members, I think, have also spoken to you about clarifying the policy and the forms for media specialists to allow kids to check out books, that I think we haven't been as clear and specific about, nor engaged parents as much in, and that we're putting that guidance out imminently.
Through the chair, yes, so we pushed out additional information. We started the school year with requesting opportunities for parents to provide voice regarding the level of comfort in regards to checking out books. Unfortunately, the pathway in which we chose to take that wasn't as user-friendly. You couldn't do it, you could, but it was very hard to manipulate on your phone, and everyone uses their phones. We've updated that form. We sent it out today. And it's perfect timing because we'll be in the midst of open house this week. So we're looking to drastically increase those numbers. At the end of the day, as I have told each and every single board member, we will do our due diligence to get that information from parents. But after a certain amount of time and the effort in which staff has put forward to receive that information back, we're going to have to ask ourselves, are we denying a child the opportunity to engage in the media center because there may be, unfortunately, a disengaged parent? And then we'll have to say, we've done our due diligence. At all times, you can continue to fill out the form, but we will provide access to your son or daughter in the absence of your voice regarding making a selection. Right now, we're still full steam ahead. We think we're going to do outstanding work with the new form that we pushed out today, and with open house, which we typically have outstanding attendance from our parents to see significant traction in that specific area.
Mrs. Rosario?
So I have the letter in front of me. It's dated June 3rd, and it states, House Bill 1467, signed by Governor DeSantis on March 25th and effective July 1st, 2022, requires school districts to be transparent in the selection of instructional materials and library and reading materials. This legislation preserves the right of parents to make decisions about what materials their children are exposed to in school. Changes for the school district are noted below, and all of the bullet points are there noted below to begin effective July 1st, 2022. There are only 3 dates that are on here bulleted, 3 different bullets with 3 different dates, all for 2023. Neither of those have anything to do with the school district adopting procedures, policies and procedures. One of those bullets that includes effective July 1st, 2022, is that each district school board, shall adopt procedures for developing library media center collections and post the procedures on the website for each school within the district. The procedures must, 1, require that the book selections must meet the criteria, and that's what we have captured here in this new policy. The second bullet is also captured in here, the third bullet is also captured in here, and so is the fourth bullet. All of them pursuant to State Statute 1006.28. And there are many other bullets on here that we're required to do as of July 1st. So not having these in place and just sitting back and waiting and putting everything on hold is going to make us out of compliance. And I am not going to support us being out of compliance again.
So, first of all, when a law goes into place, it started on July 1st, so how would we possibly be able to know what they were going to say to have something in place on the same day that the law goes in effect? You can't.
They submitted this June 3rd. They sent this to the superintendent.
I understand that. I understand that.
So-
But my point is, also in that legislation, because I read it, it said that guidance would be given to school boards concerning the age appropriateness. And that has not been given to us.
Okay.
That's the only sticking point I have.
But I don't disagree with you on that. What I'm saying is that with this letter, did you see this letter?
Yes.
Did you all see this? Okay. So this letter is clarifying some of the things that were said. They would give guidance to the districts. They did give guidance. This is the guidance. And in this, one of those items that you're talking about with age appropriateness is not in here.
Right.
However, the training for media center specialists is here to begin in January 2023. There's another report that the superintendent is supposed to certify to the DOE also in 2023. And there's something else that the district must submit to the Commissioner of Education also in 2023. Everything else is 2021.
Except for.
Minus that part, it's
Except for
not
that
even
part.
mentioned. But
Yeah.
that's not even, everything else, no, everything else is 2022, sorry. Everything else is 2020 now, as of July 1st. So I'm not gonna, Dr. Moore, you are the superintendent. I would not put you in the position of recommending that you be out of compliance. At the very least, you can say that you've made an effort, and we will put forth, you can even add a little excerpt in here pending, age, whatever. But other than that, I do not recommend that we go in that direction.
Madam Chair?
So, hold on one second.
I'm sorry.
The only point I have, and I agree that kids need to be checking out books, and we need to be careful also what's in their hands. But the only point I have to make is the guidance also included this age appropriateness guide, and we have not gotten that. And so, God forbid, some librarian gives a child a book that they feel is age appropriate, and the parent does not. Now we've gotten ourselves into a lawsuit. So I'm concerned that we're acting in front of guidance from the DOE on age appropriateness. That's the only one that I still have a sticking point with. The rest of it's fine. But the age appropriateness is what we need guidance from the DOE on. And that was supposed to be included in this legislation. They said it specifically, that we would get that. And I'm hearing, and I've heard also from other people that it might come in October instead of January. Originally, it was supposed to be in January, and then we were like, that's way too late.
Madam Chair?
October is too late. We should have gotten it July 5th with a letter, tell you the truth. Or June 5th, or whatever day it was. Yes, Dr. Jones.
Just to summarize for myself, whenever we do this again, I really want to have media specialists involved at every level if possible. We now have the parents choosing to opt in, not opt out. And Dr. Moore, what you said earlier, I don't know if we have those percentages yet, but I don't want to deny a student to be able to check out a book because a parent forgot to do that.
Dr. Moore,
Wait.
could you tell us the numbers of the percentages of parents that have filled out the form so far?
Through the chair, I'm going to send that to the board today. Roughly in elementary schools is just right at 50%, kind of overall. Secondary schools even lower. So it speaks volume. So
It speaks
secondary
volumes,
schools, 10, 15, 20, 25%. And second, elementary schools, right around 50%. It varies from school to school and community to community. But that's the action that we put into place to drive those numbers up.
And it does speak volumes, especially because the bigger picture is, especially in secondary, getting our students to use the media centers. That's another, well, that's re-envisioning. Again, when I talked with the chancellor and Ms. Brownback from DOE, they both said more information will be coming in October. Yes, the law was passed. Once the law is passed, then they see and they look at the specifics of what they need to do. And they both said that. And it also said that we shall develop procedures. And as Ms. Berenborg said, you know, we're not going to have them ready that first month, and we want to do it right. I've looked on several websites. I haven't seen a completed one by any school district.
Through the chair, listening to what all board members are saying, we are at the forefront of doing this work and creating this specific policy. A lot of the other districts are looking to Indian River County to see exactly what we are doing. I'll have the opportunity, as I said, later in a week or two to attend and speak through with other superintendents regarding the work that they are doing, as well as sharing the work that we are doing. But by no means are we late to this party in the creation of this policy. We're actually the ones who sent out the invite, for a lack of a better way of saying it. There may be a handful of districts who have already created policy, but we're up there in terms of moving forward.
And when we look at shall develop procedures, I mean, this is a real paradigm shift for us as far as what we're doing with our media centers, and we want to do it right. And I think we wait for more guidance, make sure our students who parents want them to check out books have the opportunity to do so, and we work with our media specialists.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Dr.
Yeah,
Schiff.
I'm wondering how we survived to adulthood. All these years and read all these books with nobody telling us what we could and couldn't read, and somehow we managed to become productive, contributing adults. That said, my understanding from what Mrs. Rosario said is that there should be procedures in place. We have procedures in place. We don't yet have a school board policy because we haven't received guidance from the state, as per Dr. Jones's point, but we do have a procedure in place. We are not out of compliance. We are acting in accordance with a procedure that as soon as we get proper guidance will be put into a school board policy. That's my understanding of what we're doing. So I don't think we're asking the superintendent to be out of compliance with legislation. We are doing what it is possible for us to do at this moment with the guidance that we have. So,
Can I say, is it possible in this policy just to have the grade appropriate document from the direction of the DOE just written in the policy so we can approve the policy in the next meeting? Would that be appropriate for everybody?
No, because the statute doesn't mention it. So we're
It does.
actually, it says age appropriate, but it doesn't have the definition of age appropriate.
Right.
What the statute actually says is that the libraries should not have the prohibited items that are included in 847. That's the guidance that should be provided. Age appropriate is anything that is not included in 847. Those are the prohibited items. The prohibited items are the items of which, plus what is age appropriate? I mean, it's common sense. We have standards. It's been said before. You don't give a trigonometry book to a kindergartner.
Of course not.
Follow the standards. The standards should provide age appropriateness until we get a definition from whomever, In the meantime, the prohibited items are those items that are included in 847.
Which is-
We have other statutes that also in 1006.40, that's very clear, and it tells you that that these books, all of the evaluation of all instructional materials, including library books, should be, 1, free of pornography and grade level and age appropriate, not one or the other. It is both. The "and" is very important. So at this point, since we don't have the definition, we do know what is prohibited in 847. That should be the guiding filter. I'm sorry.
So here's what I'm going to say about that. We've had a difference in our own community on what profanity is.
Again,
Obviously, even on this board, some people think that some people should be arrested, and other people think that the sheriff's department did their thorough investigation and said that they're not profane. So there is a difference of opinion in just 5 people. I shed light on the fact that I think with the legislature, whenever they fill out or they agree to a law, then it's given to staff. And in this case, it's given to DOE. And the DOE then interprets the law and says, what guidance can we give so that the law is followed correctly? That's always what happens with a law. Even when a law goes into effect on day 1, there's still guidance after that to help you understand this. So I think not stepping on the toes of the law is what we need to do. We have to tread carefully. We have to make sure we're following what the law says for us to do. That's why I suggested in the policy, we can at least adopt a policy and have grade appropriate documentation or guidance from the DOE. Because that's coming, that's imminent. We've been told that that is coming. So for us to just not acknowledge that and to throw that out, I think is inappropriate. Because we've been told we're getting that guidance. I'd like to have a policy in place. I agree with Mrs. Rosario on that. But I think the policy should read, upon guidance of the DOE for grade appropriateness. Somewhere in that needs to stay, and then we can approve a policy. That way we don't have to wait on the policy as well. We can just, if we put it in that language, later on you can add the procedure, and then we just vote on our procedure, or add the procedure to the policy in the next meeting about what the procedure would be to follow the grade appropriateness that comes from the direction of the DOE.
And we do have procedures as far as, students have to have permission for checking out books. It's opt-in now instead of opt-out. So I think our procedures are good. And Ms. Berenborg, please repeat what you said at the very beginning, what you were looking for in the, was it policy with grade appropriate, age appropriate? I forget what your first statement was.
Well, in the policy, I was just saying that, and guidance from the DOE on age appropriateness, because they're supposed to get us, remember how I brought up the community standard thing a while ago?
Yeah.
And then the DOE said, oh, no, we're going to do that. We're going to do that for you, which is great. We don't have to do that work. Because that can be very, very detailed work that takes a year to do, let's face it. A committee of people to all agree on what's appropriate could take a year.
And with the chancellor saying, wait, we'll have more information in October, I don't know what else we need. I mean, he wants to do it right. He wants us to do it right. And since, students need their parents' permission to check out a book, I think we're covering our bases, and I think we need to involve our media specialists.
Yeah, but I think it's really important that we make sure that we're following the directive of the DOE for grade
Absolutely.
appropriateness. Because, let's face it, 5 people can't agree on what's appropriate. So let's wait on that guidance.
But I think that you're giving the superintendent an open door for another criticism from the DOE.
How?
And I guarantee that's going to happen. It's going to come down, there's going to be complaint that we were given direction. He was given directives from Oliva to ensure that as of July 1st, as of the law date, July 1st, that our policies and procedures are in place to address this.
And
Our
I'm
policies, but
agreeing,
what's
and
in that-
I just said, Mrs. Rosario, that I agreed that we do that.
But-
I just said it. You're not listening to me when I speak.
No, I heard you. Now
I'm
it's my
saying
turn.
let's do.
Now you're
No,
interrupting me because
no,
I was in the
I'm saying
middle.
when
I was in the middle of speaking and you interrupted me. I heard what you said, and you said that you agree to the policy.
right,
But this letter, guidance, directive is telling Dr. Moore to create procedure. The law is written and says create policy. The guidance, written guidance as of June 3rd says create procedure.
And we all don't agree with it is.
I am often pretty critical of some of the things that happen here in the district. But this is one thing that, and when it's right, it's right. When it's wrong, it's wrong. When it's right, it's right. Dr. Moore, if you don't put this in process, we can always change what comes down later on. But the law and this guidance does not address in writing what is age appropriate. It is not a requirement. I wouldn't hang my hat up on that and put this aside until after October. I would not do that. That is not my recommendation. And I know that you want to do the right thing. So if you want to be compliant with the law and with the directives that were given to you, create the policy, create the procedure, and when new information comes to you, we can always edit it.
Okay, Mrs. Rosario, first of all, you're one voice of five.
I'm
You do
talking
not-
to him.
you-
I'm talking to the
that's fine,
superintendent.
but you were directing
and
the superintendent.
I said my recommendation. Did I not, Dr. Moore? I think everybody, we can rewind
Okay,
it.
so-
I said my recommendation is, that's my recommendation.
So I'm going to repeat my recommendation because I have that say too, and so do three other
Go
people
for it.
on this board.
Go for it.
But I did.
Go for it. But
and-
you're all recommending him to do something that is going to be illegal. We don't have something in
illegal?
place as of July 1st.
whoa, whoa,
where
whoa,
he
whoa.
is not
That
going to
is
be in
not what
compliance.
this
Whoa.
says.
When you're not in compliance with statute, and when you are not in compliance.
We're going to take a recess. It's 12:47. We're going to take,
That helps.
yep, it does. Cool off. To resume this meeting, I want to point out something in our protocols that we all agreed to. And it says, under meeting expectations, school board members are expected to model appropriate behavior, including courtesy, active listening, and respect. When a board member states their opinion, they have the right to state that opinion. They have the right to make their opinion known. And for another board member to say that it's an illegal action, what we are stating as an opinion for discussion, is inappropriate. Is there anything you'd like to say to that,
I would
Mrs.
absolutely,
Rosario?
because my opinion does not violate protocol. My opinion does not violate protocol. My opinion is as I said before, if there is a law that is supposed to be in place July 1st, and we do not have compliance with that law, out of compliance with a law is illegal. It is not lawful. There
Okay.
is nothing wrong or out of protocol for me to say that. And if you are going to talk about respect, then you should have not interrupted me when I was mid-sentence in my thoughts.
You do it to other board members all the time. You
Okay,
did
we're
it to me
talking
today.
about this specific situation, so let's stick with what's happened today.
Right. Rewind the tape. All right,
Yes,
so
let's do that.
So, Mrs. Rosario, I'm going to repeat what I said before, and I'd like you to actually listen to what I said, okay? I said I agree with you on the fact that we need to move forward with a policy. But yet you're arguing with me in the fact that I said I agreed with you on moving forward with a policy, because I think that we shouldn't wait on producing a policy. The only sticking point that I had was the fact that the grade appropriateness, which has been the sticking point of when people come up and they say, this book is good, this book is not good. Two people will sit there with the same book and tell us it's not appropriate or it is appropriate. Are you listening?
I'm listening to you.
So
Is there a protocol for someone not to be able to type and take notes? Because if there is, then you have to.
I'm
let me
trying to
know.
be respectful.
So am I.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So my point is, I wanted, and I have this right as a board member to ask, not to direct, but to ask, if we could insert a part about grade appropriateness coming down from the DOE. That's the only part I asked to insert. But I'm being attacked for that because I asked for that. I have the right to ask for that. You can vote for it or not when it comes before us. It is not going against law to put in a statement about direction from the DOE forthcoming. That is not against law. Any other board member like to speak? Dr. Jones.
I'm looking at my notes again from Chancellor Oliva, and this is a little bit off topic, but not. With 1467, that refers just to elementary, with listing the library materials and reading list on the district website. He said it's not in effect until departments really meet to talk about the rules and look at the format as described by the state board rule, which will go into effect in October. So that word, or that, month keeps coming back to me. Now, as far as our procedures, we have procedures with our media center. I know we need to be more clear on when we get the donations and so forth, but I do not think a law is being broken here. It's July 1st, if the law begins, no one's going to have it ready. And as you said, Dr. Moore, we're probably a little bit ahead on this. I couldn't find it on other websites. I talked with a few FSBA people. They don't have it yet. They're waiting for a little bit more guidance. And as long as we have parents having to opt in to even check out a library book, which I don't want other students to be, I don't want students denied because of that, we're following as far as no one gets to do that without parent permission. So I'm comfortable with that. I don't like it 100%, but with what's going on where we don't know what's coming down the pike exactly, I understand.
So, Madam Chair, if
Yeah,
I
I think Dr. Schiff
I'm sorry.
wanted
I
to speak.
apologize.
Sorry.
It's fine.
You're okay? How about you, Mr. Barefoot?
As far as I've listened to this, as far as I'm concerned, there is procedure in place. It may or may not be appropriate a month from now, but there is one in place. It makes all the sense in the world. We've got a potential draft here. If we need to tweak it when guidance comes, 1st of October, 1st of November, whenever it comes, we're able to do so, but I'm fine with things as they stand now in waiting for that guidance.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think the staff has done an outstanding job of kind of leading from the front here once again. We are in constant contact with the state, as I said earlier, regarding the creation and future implementation of this specific policy. I have zero concern regarding breaking a law. We are in the process of creating it much earlier than most districts. Thank you, Ron. It's interesting that we are so close in terms of what specifically different board members are saying, and I would wish, from my perspective, it didn't raise to this level of discourse, because the reality is we are very, very, very close, absolute best, really, to create and implement policy that allows us to move forward. So the suggestion of looking at that is something staff and I will circle back and bring a recommendation moving forward. So
Thank you.
that,
As I pointed out, every board member has the right to make suggestions. And it is your job to direct and determine and bring it back to us to vote on, yay or nay. But it's not our job to write it.
Correct. And I've got no issues saying. Following through in the most appropriate time that ensures that the district is A, legal and sound, and B, acting in the best interest of all children in our community. And that's exactly what will happen. But thank everyone for your input, and staff will continue to work.
Thank you. And as I stated, I did check with a representative and said, we need this guidance, and she understands that all school districts are going through this.
You're correct.
And they're all waiting on this guidance.
Correct.
It's not just us.
All right. That brings us back to our most popular cabinet member, Mr. Fagan.
Thank you, Dr. Moore, through the chair. This is an item to renew the coalition contract with Express Scripts, which is for employee pharmacy services. The current contract expires in January of '23, so we were trying to get it moved out and approved early. It is scheduled for September, but we're going to have to move it to October. We're still working on the contract. As you remember, the overall savings over the next 3 years for this for employees and the district is approximately $2.6 million. Any questions?
Just thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next item will be presented by Ms. Dampierre, our assessment calendar for the upcoming school year, or the current school year, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Through the chair, I have one item on the agenda, the statewide uniform assessment calendar for the 22-23 school year. This item has been reviewed with each board member during your board briefings. The assessment calendar includes both state and mandated assessments and district-required assessments that are used as diagnostic and progress monitoring tools. Are there any questions?
Not a question, just a comment. I know that we are continuing to decrease the amount of testing we do while remaining in compliance with state guidelines. I still think, unfortunately, we focus too much on testing and too little on thinking and critical thinking. I realize that we must remain in compliance with guidelines around that, but I think to the degree possible, it is our job as educators to focus on teaching students to think, not simply to take tests.
One thing I will ask is, talking about algebra. I know there have been some concerns about algebra and the students that are in there not getting enough support to be able to pass the test. So that first progress monitoring, we should get an idea of how kids are doing in algebra.
Through the chair, and let me speak specifically to algebra, it's important to keep in mind that the state assesses students in algebra whenever they are in that specific course. When you look school site specific, because we are providing the highest level of access to all students who have the ability to participate in courses, the percent of students that we have taking algebra in 7th and 8th grade is significant. If you were to go back and look at those 50% of the grade level of students in those specific schools that are taking that course, you would see pass rates in the 70s and 80s going back and specifically looking at middle school acceleration. That's that number. When you look at a specific high school, because we're not, like what other districts do is say, I know you can perform in an algebra class, but we want to wait until you're in 9th or 10th grade to do that. That's just wrong. So looking at a high school's algebra scores is a misrepresentation of the total grade, or the total number of students in 9th or 10th grade. That isn't specifically what you were saying, but to answer your question specifically, all of those courses at Sebastian River have in fact been covered. You didn't ask that question, but you alluded around the area. We have hired a teacher. We have deployed district staff or provided the opportunity to provide district staff to cover courses until that teacher is fully hired. Mr. Bass personally walked that individual through the hiring process to get them in as quickly as possible. In terms of progress monitoring algebra and all other courses, I think some of the work that we do here really leads the state in terms of truly progress monitoring and connecting a data point to an instructional practice linked to professional learning and development and planning to shift and modify those specific lessons truly to, in real time, evaluate the impact of instruction. That is the model that the state has moved to this specific year. It is a work in progress. We're going to learn a lot of new stuff about how they're going to grade schools and the amount of time that we're going to get data back. It is a true under construction project. The data that we receive from the state is very fundamental or basic, but as we move throughout the school year, we still have the systems in place to link a data point to an instructional behavior in a classroom to help grow that teacher as well as that student. So yes.
Oh.
Long answer of yes.
Okay, Dr.
Maura,
Jones.
do we still have the PERT, or is that gone? I can't remember.
Through the chair, we will be advocating for the PERT again.
Okay.
So they did extend it for last school year, and we want to continue to advocate for that as well.
Yeah, I remember they did that last year. Yeah, when you look at the high school, it's a different score than the students have already taken in the middle school, but we still want them to be successful.
Absolutely.
Is it still whether they pass algebra or geometry EOC?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the progress monitoring 1, 2, and 3, it'll be interesting to see how our students do, and I'm still going to be a little bit perplexed on how they do that school grade, but we'll see.
Yep.
No gains, right?
There are no
Because
learning gains.
there's-
Information that we have from the state is that, as it always has been in a transition year, they'll have to norm the data as they receive it, so they've already notified us to be patient with results. It may not come into the opening of the next school year in terms of overall outcomes, which makes it very hard for scheduling purposes. We'll have more data than we've had in previous years because of the progress monitoring, but it will be a very different year because it is a new assessment. What was a level 3 last year may in fact be a level 2 this year. You know, the bar has risen, and we're going to have to be able to adjust and ultimately accelerate based on our ability to adjust.
Only last comment I have is when I went to schools that first week, and when I see kindergarten students taking a test on the computer. Okay.
Yes.
I know they have to.
Yep.
I should have brought this up earlier, but I'm looking at the estimates of total testing time by grade level. And I'm wondering why it is. I see that in 4th and 5th grades, we have average 1,520 minutes, which is about 25 hours. That jumps up in 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. In 7th grade, it's up to 31 hours. And then it decreases progressively 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Can you explain how and why that is?
I can tell you in middle school, we increase, that number increased due to an addition of iReady assessments. We increased the iReady, we added the iReady mastery test, which we didn't, that's an option for the teachers to utilize as like a formative assessment. For high school, that time was decreased due to we reduced the unit assessments. And that was our goal this year, to really look at, we knew these 3 tests were coming along, that we looked at how could we reduce some of the district tests that we were given, which was our unit assessments. So some of those were reduced at each grade level, and some were not.
And so what I see in this is that the students who that in K through first grade, yeah, K through first grade has the least testing. Middle school has the most, but by the time you get to high school, it's about the level of the second graders and goes down from there. Why are we testing? I understand that we want to know where students are as they're progressing through the grades so that by the time they get to high school, they're prepared and we have a good understanding where they are. But there seems to be a real disproportionality here in who's being tested when and how much. That's what I'm having trouble following.
And in some of our middle schools, you know, there's subject-specific tests, like in our 7th grade, we have civics. We don't have a social studies test in 6th and 8th grade. We have a social studies test in 11th grade, but we do not have it in 9th and 10th grade. So it just varies by grade when you get to subject specifics in 6th, 7th, 8th, and then it tapers off in 11th and 12th grade because all of your assessments are done. You're only taking the U.S. history, econ, that kind of, you know.
Okay, because then by the time you're in 11th and 12th grade, you're taking tests, the proportion of time is comparable to VPK, K in first grade, which I'm not objecting to. As an amount of testing, it seems though vastly disproportionate in grades with students who are best able to manage some of that rigor and students who are least able to manage.
But we're done with testing usually after 10th grade, our reading, ELA. We still have in 11th grade, we have U.S. history, we have some of those, but it's not to the level, you don't have reading again, you don't have math unless you did not pass, you have to take a retake. So it is less testing in 11th and 12th grade because you've mastered pretty much everything by 10th grade. There's no more EOC except for U.S. history and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't make the rule on this, the state does, but
But I'm
it's a lot
happy.
of testing.
But I'm happy to say overall, compared to last year, we did reduce with the addition of the state required test. We did go from 1.76% to 1.69% overall. So there was some strategic conversation with CNI, collaboration, as well as looking at just how can we reduce the number of tests that we do have control over and still be able to progress monitor and get the information we need to make sure our students are mastering the content.
And just a last bit on this. With the shift in the state testing and moving towards the new the state progression standards, I'm forgetting the name right now, are we seeing an increase, a leveling off, or a decrease in the amount of testing that the state is requiring, specifically here in the school district?
Through the chair, I'll answer that. Yeah, because it's a 3-time required assessment, those numbers actually go up. So if you were to break these numbers down by what is required by the state and what is required locally by the district, we had to problem solve to drastically reduce the district-controlled assessments. We're down to hardly anything,
Right.
really, to monitor that, and then becoming reliant on the volume of testing required by the state.
So the state testing is actually going up. So despite that we are aiming towards moving away from FSAs and other high-stakes testing, the state is actually increasing the amount of testing we're required to do.
Through the chair, that information is accurate, but in the state's defense, I said that at 111, there's a different theory of action. It is moving to a progress monitoring. The goal is to provide real-time data to us based on a student's deficit so we could respond. We're just growing that, the state is growing that model over the course of time.
And are we having the experience that that's occurring? That we are actually getting that data in a way that's helpful towards furthering a student's education?
So, through the chair, I think what we've done in receiving that from 2 different platforms, getting it into our systems and then back into the hands of teachers, is some absolutely outstanding work. So we are taking that data and rather telling teachers, hey, go learn a new system, stick with the one system that you have, and we'll give that data to you, and we'll just bridge the gap from that system into our current system, a system that they're all familiar to looking at, both coaches, assistant principals, and now teachers. So that data is still limited, but as the state grows that data, we'll have the behind-the-scenes background really to push it to teachers in a format in which they already know how to use. So the answer to your question is yes. With what they have provided, the answer is yes.
We good? Mr. Barefoot, you good?
Thank you, Ms. Dampier. And now our dual enrollment contract, Ms. Becerra.
Good afternoon, through the chair. The item in front of you is the dual enrollment agreement between Indian River State College and SDIRC. It is a standard agreement. We typically enter into this agreement annually. This one now, they've moved to a 2-year cycle of agreements. So the one in front of you will run through June 30th, 2024. Board members were briefed during the individual briefings on this item. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I see none.
Thank you.
Hearing none, Mr. Bass will present items F and G.
Good afternoon. Through the chair, first item I have is the Sebastian River High School Cleveland Clinic Sports Medicine Agreement. I briefed you all on this, but I want to go over a couple of the highlights of it. I guess in the fall of 2020, had a meeting with some Cleveland Clinic staff, and they were looking to start a sports medicine program with our schools or a school. Met with Dr. Clay Greason, and later followed in with Dr. Colin Kitchell. Dr. Greason is a graduate of the University of Kansas. He has been in sports medicine his entire career. He was I believe the beach volleyball orthopedic surgeon for University of Southern California. After that, he was at Dodge City Community College, overseeing their football program. He's practiced medicine in Lawrence, Kansas, and then has recently moved to Vero Beach Cleveland Clinic. Dr. Colin Kitchell graduated from Ross University, and he is a native Vero Beach resident who has come back to practice here. Dr. Kitchell is a family medical doctor with certifications in sports medicine. And they look to come to provide, they want to provide a service to our students. So we took a look at what we had, and we decided that Sebastian River High School would be a place that they could look to get their foot in the door and provide these services to our kids. And also, there was not a robust service to the student athletes at Sebastian River High School. There was medical service, but it was lacking. So the highlights of the agreement, which we've worked with their attorneys and our attorneys, I believe Suzanne started on it, Molly finished it up. We finally have got everything settled and all the dust is cleared, but here are the highlights of the agreement. The Cleveland Clinic doctors would provide services to Sebastian River High School athletic programs with parental consent. Physicals for the students, they held their first physical session in the fall. They had 15 medical staff from Cleveland Clinic there to provide physicals to the fall athletes. Doctors would be at games when possible. Also, Cleveland Clinic would be providing an athletic trainer to supplement the athletic trainer that's already there to cover games and provide additional services. They provide opportunity for VIP medical appointments if needed by those students whose parents have consented for them to be treated by them. Expedited imaging, which is if needed, which if you've had to have any type of imaging as of late, you know that can be a long process of getting that. They will get you right in. The doctors also provide training room visits in the afternoons on a weekly basis if needed. This is one thing that I really like. The doctors will meet with coaches and injured students prior to any competition or practicing to identify limitations or restrictions that student athlete may have. Another one that I really like, they cover the emergency action plans with the coaches prior to their season. So they go over and say, okay, where's the AED? Do you know how to use it? Are the supplies here? Is it charged? Where's the cold water submersion tub? Are you monitoring for heat illness? All these different things, and what are your plans to go through that? That is great, and that's something that I don't believe that we were doing prior to that. Electronic forms, FHSA sends out a paper form to the students each year, and they have to take it to their physician to get their physical. And then the paper form gets signed off and goes back to the athletic director and goes into a box somewhere. And they store it. The Cleveland Clinic puts that into their health records database. So when that kid comes in the next year, it's just like a regular medical record through Cleveland Clinic. Kid comes in the next year, they can go through and identify the problems or whatever that were concerns of the previous year's physical, which is super for them to be able to compare year after year, because speaking from experience, you may have a kid that has an issue one year, then you have a new set of doctor or he's seen by somebody else the next year, and that next doctor may not catch that. So that's a really good item for our students. Also, Cleveland Clinic doctors will provide face-to-face PD for coaches and staff. And if you read through the contract, you did see that there is a $3,550 fee that Sebastian River High School will be paying for out of their discretionary fund.
And through the chair, just to add, I know Friday night was the first home game for Sebastian. Doc Jones was there, Ms. Rosario was there, and a student, one of our students, was injured on the field. I think it was just a sprained ankle, but it was really neat to see the entire team run out to his aid. It wasn't just a trainer that was there, it was a doctor, it was there, it was a trainer, as well as another student aide. So it was really cool to see this coming to life. Great initiative.
And I will say that we did not create this program. This is kind of a spinoff of what's already in Martin County Schools with Cleveland Clinic. But when I was made aware of it, I thought, wow, our student athletes need to have the same level of service. So that'll be coming to you at the next board meeting. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, a couple. Dr. Jones.
Well, just thank you, Mr. Bass. This is absolutely a great partnership. As Dr. Moore said, we were on the field and we saw the Cleveland Clinic doctors there and so forth. And this is just something that I think will just continue to grow, and thank you. Now, you also talk about what you have for our helmets now, that you showed me for concussion in practice, because that's key.
So if you've watched any type of sports as of late with football and practice, particularly if you watched Hard Knocks, Detroit Lions this season, you will see this halo type cap that players are wearing over their helmet. It's like a padded cushion protective gear that they strap on, they bolt in and strap onto their helmets for the players who have high collision head-on frequency to try to limit and prevent head injury. In addition to that, just the cap itself does reduce the temperature on those student athletes. And Mr. Seymour and his team ordered, I believe, 100 for each high school. So our football players will be starting to wear those as soon as they come in.
Somebody else had their hand up? Ms. Rosario?
This agreement here doesn't seem to indicate whether it's one doctor that's going to come out. It just says that the hospital employs medical personnel. But is this just for one doctor?
It's primarily for two, Dr. Kitchell and
Two
Dr.
doctors.
Greason, plus the athletic trainer that they are providing, and they are trying to get another athletic trainer in place also. And what the athletic trainers are through Cleveland Clinic, and they're trained through Cleveland Clinic and have their certifications. Why the athletic trainers are so valuable, and there be multiple of them, is in the spring you may have a track meet, a baseball game, and a softball game all going on at the same time. And Sebastian River High School has one trainer, but they don't have three. So they could provide those additional trainers to cover and be at those individual events.
So I would recommend, I mean, and I don't really know, maybe legal, maybe Mrs. Maddox Maddox. Mrs. Shattuck can help with this. But I would probably make sure that we're including the 2 to 3 doctors would be provided. Because that sometime down the line, if it's not indicated and we only have one doctor who's consistently showing up, it defeats the purpose. We're still spending the $3,000 that's originally intended for up to 3, medical personnel. And if we only have one, then the students and the school actually lose out on those services.
Yes, ma'am.
So I don't know if you can consider that,
Okay.
at least getting a word of, at a
Commitment.
minimum 2, at a maximum 3, maybe more, and kind of including that in the language. The other thing that I had a question of, since we're on this sports medicine topic and providing services, where does the heart monitoring fit in all of this?
So-
Because that seems to be a really great, I know originally when we were having these discussions and added the heart monitoring to a previous policy, there was some talk about maybe Cleveland Clinic can provide that for our district. So has
right.
that come up in this
Yes, ma'am, it
conversation?
has. I'm glad you brought it up.
You're welcome.
We have used Who We Play For in the past, and I'm not sure if they were there in the fall. I know Vero is still using them, and Cleveland Clinic, the doctor said they can absolutely use them. But what is really good about the physical that they go through with Cleveland Clinic is they do a questionnaire, an in-depth questionnaire with each individual student athlete. And those questionnaires have got trigger questions in there, so if something pops up in the questionnaire, they will then go automatically to not, would you like to opt in for the heart screening, which is what we agreed upon in here, but no, you shall have this heart screening. So it kind of like catches something. I know Dr. Greason was talking to me last week that it wasn't here, it was in Dodge City, that they caught a kid through the questionnaire alone and said, no, you've got to go in and have this screening done, and glad they did, because he was just, at any moment, he was ready to just succumb to a heart issue. So it's a double safeguard in addition to, because, I believe when we left it that day was, we're not going to force them to do it, the opportunity would be there. So this is like another step of security.
Yeah, as long as there are both, processes in place, I would be okay with that. I just wouldn't want to rely on just the survey, because the idea of what Who We Play For does is that it catches heart issues in students that are otherwise completely and fully healthy, where a survey wouldn't catch any of that. You look healthy according to the survey, but when you're on the heart monitor, then all of a sudden there's a heart issue, or something comes up that's a concern. And that's the whole point of having it, is that it actually can catch heart concerns prior to a heart attack or any kind of unfortunate heart failure while they're already on the team. I mean, on the game, on the field, sorry. But other than that, I think it's a great opportunity. Have you had conversations, I know that as we expand school choice, have we had opportunities to expand the medical services or the medical certification at a school campus other than what we have at TCTC, to include, this is completely further on down the line probably, but to include, I've always been in favor of vet tech, you all know that, I've talked about it, agriculture. But in this case, if we're already starting to work on some collaboration with Cleveland Clinic, why not also have some of these conversations about what it would look like to include maybe in Sebastian, since we're starting there, in a medical program or a pre-med or something along those lines.
So through the chair, I can answer that question indirectly. And you referenced the rate of growth at the technical college. We are looking to expand relatively quickly a practical nursing program to begin next school year, which would be a share time program for our seniors. So this would be practical nursing that we would offer for our seniors, which is a huge step. That is the nursing position that is truly desired the most. It is at an extremely high level, and we'll be able to transport students back and from for their senior year. So it's not directly saying that it would be at the school site specific, but the resources are there. We're renovating one of the spaces now to create, based on the programming that we're going to be offering at the technical college, but we want to maximize the space. So looking at creating a practical nursing, recruiting a nurse to come in and teach it, that's going to be our biggest obstacle, but we're looking to have that in place next school year. And then it would be afforded just to high school seniors.
Okay. And my last question is, and it may be here, I may have missed it, traveling. When students are traveling from game to game, do the services also travel with them? Do the physicians travel with them?
The athletic trainers traveling with them, and at times, if it's close and it fits in their schedule, the doctors are going to.
So if someone has an issue on someone else's field, do they have a medical, or they just call 911?
Well, you'll have EMS that will usually be there at every game, and I'm particularly looking at football, because those are the ones you have, the most frequency of traumatic injury. But you'll have EMS on site. The home team more than likely will have a physician there, and then you will have your athletic trainer. That is if the Cleveland Clinic doctors are not there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, couple questions. I see that it says not limited to football. So contact sports, I would assume?
All sports.
Okay, all sports.
Yes, ma'am.
And so having been an athletic trainer in college, I know that I was limited as to the services that I could provide, and also always under a doctor's orders for certain things. For example, when a student athlete would come in and they were given the order for ice bath and whatever treatment, I had to make sure there was a doctor's order with it. Is that what we're doing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so doctors are having constant conversations with trainers?
Yes, ma'am. That constant, yes. And I had her name written down, but I forget the lady that's at Sebastian River High School. She and the athletic trainer from Cleveland Clinic are constantly in communication, and Dr. Greason and Dr. Kitchell are constant communication with their trainer. So it's like a round robin of communication going on.
I'm really glad to hear that, because I have expressed my concern with you as far as in the past, athletic trainers have kind of overstepped a little bit of what they're allowed to do or what they should do. I know that when I moved, I was an athletic trainer in Vermont and worked with rugby and hockey and things like that. But then I had to do my student project down at Baylor and worked with football. So you had to have that experience in order to get your certification finished up. I will say that when I was in Vermont, the rules were I can't get near a hypodermic needle and everything else. Down in Texas, man, the athletic trainers were doing the cortisone injections and things like that. So it was really scary to me to see that sort of thing. So we are having a doctor then prescribe it, and the athletic trainers are just following doctor's orders. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. And keep in mind, if they have weekly training room visits too, so the doctors will come in weekly if you've got a kid that has a specific type of therapy they're going through, and he'll either issue that, help perform that therapy or monitor or supervise it.
Okay. Other than that, I mean, if it's an injury on the field, they can go out and attend to it and do their best.
Correct.
If there's no doctor there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right.
Spearenborg, just,
Sure.
Mr. Bass, is there still a cost, when I was back here as executive director with, I went in to see when they were doing the heart monitors and so forth, is there still a cost to get that extra test if they choose to do it?
There is, but, if we've got a kid that can't afford it, then obviously we're covering it. And, just something that was kind of neat, when Cleveland Clinic is charging $20 for
Right.
physical, but what was really cool is when they collected the money from earlier this summer, Cleveland Clinic doctors donated all that back to the athletic department.
Oh, that's so nice.
Thank you, thank you.
Great. Mr. Zaria?
The cost for the heart monitoring is $20.
Yes, ma'am.
And that would be, what we agreed on was that the cost would be on the parent, and then, just as you mentioned, if the parent couldn't afford it, then the school or the district would pick it up. I have a question. This is something that I was going to bring up earlier, and it speaks to security, since we're talking about other people coming onto campus and having dealings with students, even in a contracted manner. Something that has come to my attention is that we have a lot of volunteers on our school campuses, right? Many of the volunteers are parents, which we welcome, and many are other, outside organizations, 501c3s. organizations that have after-school programs in our schools. And so I was wondering about the security or the policies that we have in place with regard to background checks for all of them. I don't know if we are doing that religiously. So we have several policies, right? We have one that's 9,200. We have another one that is 8475, and another one that is not here. I thought I brought it here. And they all really talk about volunteers in school. There's another safety and security one that I forgot that's here, that is not with me. And it really talks about prospective volunteers that they must complete a background application, a background check. We don't do that religiously. I'm sure that we have parent volunteers and outside organizations that are on our campuses that we are probably not doing that with every single one of them. If we are, great. If we are not, what can we do to address that?
Through the chair, I'm pretty sure we are.
Yeah?
You know, if there's someone that is coming on to volunteer with our students and we're not made aware of it, then that's the issue that we have with the school.
So how does that work with all of the organizations? Do they do regular background checks? Is it once in a while background check?
So once you're printed, those prints are in the database for 5 years, and then per statute, you have to be reprinted in 5 years. So if they're printed and they're in the database, and let's say a volunteer gets arrested, we get notification immediately.
Automatically?
Yes, ma'am. And
So-
then we will cross-reference to, okay, are they on one of our campuses now at this point in time? And then if it's something that's a disqualifying offense, then obviously we'll notify them and say, you know, you no longer can gain access to campus and work with kids.
Yeah, so on one of these policies, it says volunteer applications who will work with students in an unsupervised manner, out of sight or hearing of supervising staff, are required to pass a level 2 criminal background screening. All volunteers, chaperones on school-sponsored trips, including overnight and day trips, must pass a level 2 criminal background screening. And the superintendent may require a level 2 criminal background screening for any other situation that he deems appropriate or activity that is deemed appropriate. So I guess it just kind of, although I was going to mention this earlier today, I just want to make sure, especially coming out of a safety meeting, that we are ensuring that everyone that has access to our school buildings, everyone, you know, this includes school volunteers, parents, the PTA, senior citizens, students, and others who assist the teacher or other members of school staff, as it's written in the policy, you know, are given that. And I think there is a cost that comes with that too, that is the requirement of the person.
Yes.
My only concern, I mean, I think we should do it with everybody, but my only concern is how do we, there is an opportunity here that the district can cover that, since we're talking about covering, that the district can cover the cost of the background screening for those parents who, and it's written in here, for someone who can't afford it. So I don't know what you all do to handle that or to vet that process. Maybe those who have, you know, lunch, you know, Title I schools, or I don't know how you're going to do it, but it is a provision within the policy. I just don't want to limit parent engagement just because of this. However, on the other side, I want to make sure that we're, you know, checking everyone and making sure that everyone is screened appropriately. So I suppose I'll end with that same process and policy holds true even for contracts, for those who are contracted to be on our school campuses. Okay.
I want to make a statement about the fingerprinting. So I do know that Representative Grall, Senator-elect Grall, is looking into legislation about getting universal fingerprinting for the state. In other words, I know that when I got elected the first time and got fingerprinted, I had just been fingerprinted down in St. Lucie as a teacher because I had had my 5 years come up, and so I had to go down and get my fingerprinting again, literally a week. And then I came up here and had to get my fingerprinting done again because it was two separate entities. And I know that she's looking into doing a universal one that once you're in the system, it'll be seen by everybody. Is that in place yet, or is there conversation about that?
It is it's in the policy update that we sent, and it was put into legislation this past session, I believe.
Okay,
Molly's
good. So
looking
it
at
did
me
get
like-
voted on. I know she was talking about
And
it.
as far as the activation of it, I'm not sure where the Department of Education is at with it, but I know Dr. Soot had talked about it would possibly be this fall. So, I mean, any given moment.
So what's great about that is if somebody's a nurse or, works somewhere else and they're in this system, then they don't have to pay to do it again. They are automatically in the system, and we don't have to pay, and they don't have to pay double. So I think that's great if we can look into when that's going to be activated. I think that'd be helpful to get out there so that we can get more volunteers for people to say, oh, I don't want to pay that fee again, and I don't want to go through all that. It's going to be streamlined for them.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, so the next item I've got is our 5-year capital plan, and I wanted to see if the facilities team would come up and have a seat. Mr. Westenberger, Michelle Simons, and Mr. Michael. Y'all come on up in case the board has questions that I can't answer. So this particular item kind of ties in with the 5-year work plan, but we'll take the capital plan first. You've got an attached document that has got, basically lays out the 5-year capital plan. And the development of the 5-year capital plan has a handful of things that are taken into consideration. Number one, what are the specific facility needs of the district? Mr. Westenberger, Mr. Michael go through different systems throughout the entire school year, and we have on a cycle of replacement for a lot of these systems. I know one of the things you'll see in there is HVAC replacement. You have a life existency of probably 12 years on some of our HVAC and chiller items. Sometimes it's less than that. They've got those scheduled here to be replaced. The next thing that to take into consideration is prioritization, and that comes from you guys' input. Also, it comes from district staff's input and principals' input on their facility. Then the third item that takes into consideration on developing this list is how much revenue do we have, and are we going to be able to afford it? We can all have a big appetite for something big and nice and shiny, but if we don't have the funds to do it, then we've got to figure out another way to get that accomplished. So going through the 5-year capital plan here, if you've taken a chance to look at it, you can see that we have got everything from soups to nuts listed in here, talking about land acquisition, portables, and our different projects. On page 2 and 3 of that document is probably the most detailed element of the plan, and that specifically, where's my copy? Is this my copy? Oh, yes, okay. That specifically lays out by school and by site what the determined need is, the estimated budget, keep in mind that's an estimated budget, and then what year it's planned to take place in. While I'm referencing these 2 pages, this also will serve as the guide for the 5-year work plan that we'll get to here in just a minute. So any questions on the 5-year capital plan?
I have one, since I didn't see any hands go up. The band and fine arts money that got taken out of this cap, or got added to, since we were talking about the budget. I see it's 317,256 over 5 years. So you put 150 towards it this year, right? Have they been told that they need to save money for next year for band instrument repairs and things like that, since there's no money in the budget for the following year?
Mr. Fagan, I have not communicated that to anybody. Have you?
Okay, because I just caught that there's nothing the following year. So
Well-
tell them not to spend all their money the first year.
We'll definitely tell them not to spend all their money, but another thing too is, some of our projects that we've got for this year, there may be some money that does not get spent this year that could go to that.
I gotcha. I appreciate you taking that money and putting it towards fine arts, because I know, their biggest concern was repair of instruments and buying new instruments and things like that. Again, curriculum can't come out of there, so I understand that. I appreciate that. Where did the money come from to put into there? Where did you steal from Peter to pay Paul?
So we had a list of about 10 or 11 items that we kind of shuffled around. Mr. Westenberger, do you remember off the top of your head? I know that, I think we pushed a painting job back.
So there's competing interest for the dollars. And what we do is
Of course, there always is.
we create a process where the team will come and sit with me, and they make their recommendations when you're getting down to that very small percent as to, we have 98% of it funded, but there's 2% in which we can't norm on the specific process. And then I make the final decision regarding what the recommendation would be, which would be, as an example, would be the band instruments, technology devices, and then reprioritizing some capital projects in order to shift or fund those. So there will be a realignment of the budget when it comes for final approval, which would include the budgeted line for the instruments over the course of the next several years. So that's just in process.
Okay, and then the other thing I see on here, like in Dodgertown, it does talk about front entry renovation, so you put that in there. Okay, got it. I'll say nothing else about that. Any other questions? Dr. Jones?
Yes, thank you. I know when you look at this in general, a lot of money will go to security and safety, HVAC, technology, painting, plumbing, and so forth. But when you look at what you're going to do at the schools, one thing we used to do is principals would say, this is what we need, and then we'd help prioritize it, regarding, is this needed for safety, is this needed for that? Are the principals brought into this at all?
Yeah. Bob and I meet with them every year, usually around January, February timeframe. The last couple of years, I've sent out the list and say, hey, fill this out. If you need me to make a site visit, we'll have a site visit and discuss it with you. Some of the principals do. Some of them just choose to fill out the form and give it to me because they've been through the drill many a time. So yeah, we have collaboration with them every year to figure out, prioritize their needs. And then obviously we've got 24, 25 odd sites that we have to prioritize along with the general maintenance needs that we know that need to happen.
Yeah. I know some items were changed or removed, and I understand why, and that's the superintendent's call on the priorities. Just so they get feedback as to maybe when it can come about again. I think it's, as a principal, you'd say, I got this, but I didn't get this. When you look at the priorities, you understand why. So thank you.
Welcome.
Dr. Schiff? Okay. Ms. Rosario?
I'm going to go back to the performing arts allocation. There's a gap year in between each of the years here.
That's what I said.
I know. Can I please finish? I have a question, a thought, a concern, or maybe even...
So maybe not a concern after this statement. So they've corrected that. We did this last week where we finalized that budget. So it's just a matter of coming together, and you'll see a different budget in which there's no gap year, and it goes through over the course of 5 years.
But are you going to separate though? I mean, are you going to add? I don't know. What are you going to do? How are you going to do that? Will they still get 150 this
Yes.
year? Okay.
Yes. Per year.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a question about the roof replacements. So is there a requirement how many years we have to keep a roof on a school or not keep a roof on a school according to insurance? Because I know everybody's dealing with that with their homes. Is there a rule with that with schools?
No.
Okay, so we're just up for
We're replacing
replacements
roofs
because
as
they need them.
as they need them, yeah.
Okay, so we're not doing it just because of insurance costs or
No,
whatever?
absolutely not.
Okay.
I don't have enough money to even come
Well,
close to
well, I
doing
know,
that.
but,
Yeah.
nobody does, but they're being told that they're
Yeah.
going to get their insurance dropped if they don't change the roof.
No, this is all just based on need,
Okay.
roof assessments that we've had done, and we know that we need to replace them.
Anyone else?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and next item I've got is spot survey, which is a DOE form, and this is for the Treasure Coast Elementary DOT land acquisition that was brought to Mr. Westerberger and I guess, late last spring. If you look up on the screen or so forth, it may be easier to look here. The piece of property that is going to be acquired due to the expansion of County Road 510 is this little yellow line going that direction. That is 0.313 acres. And this is needed because there is going to be a sidewalk that is going to be extended from down around the curve down this way. That will have access to the school there. And, there's really not a lot that we can do about it. DOT will either acquire it or eminent domain it, but they've got to have that. So this is the little piece of section of land that we're talking about, this little strip here. And then right here at the junction of this street, which is ours, that goes out to 510. So in order for us to get that sold or let them acquire it for a cost, we have to have a spot survey that has to be completed prior to bringing the acquisition agreement to you all for approval. The total negotiated acquisition price is $281,400. Originally, the purchase price was $155,000. Mr. Westenberger negotiated a little more cost out of that because in that we've got to move the LED sign that's here, but we wanted to make sure that we had enough money to rebuild one or put a new one there in case something happened in the transport or moving of it. Also, we got funding for landscaping here. Then what is not on this particular project but is coming in the future that we would not get any funding for is also the moving of the LED sign at Sebastian River High School. Back when the school was built, it was built and put in the right-of-way. And when we put the LED new marquee sign there last year, we used the existing concrete pad that was there. And DOT is doing a similar project right at the junction of the roads there on 510 to Sebastian River High School. No funding or no acquisition will have to take place there, but because they're doing that, that signage would have to be moved. So we were able to negotiate the cost for that also. So that's why the $281,000. Let's see, what else? There is some verbiage in what was submitted to you that is going to be changed. When we communicated to Department of Education, Office of Educational Facilities, they put in one of the sections that you all would be approving it in October. Obviously, you all may not approve it in October, so we've backed that language out, and the reflected change will show when we take it to you all for approval in 2 weeks.
Okay, Dr. Schiff?
No, nothing.
Okay. Anybody? Ms. Rosario?
The good work on the negotiating, so it doesn't come out of our pocket essentially. But did you hear if they, even though we're going to move the sign at Sebastian River High School back off of the easement, are they going to, is the DOT going to eventually come in and expand that road as well, eventually?
Through the chair, that was not communicated to me up there. This is the only expansion that we're aware of. And this expansion is not set to happen until fall of '24.
Yeah. Yeah, and
But
I
we have
believe,
some
I believe there
time.
is an expansion up on, across from Sebastian River High School. They're gonna kind of shift that thing.
So when will this acquisition actually take place then? I know the process is to get the paperwork through.
The acquisition for this will occur in December, is when we will sign off on it, if you all approve it in October or prior to December, because they have to have it done by this calendar year.
So we'll actually get the monies for it long before the actual progress
We
begins.
should get the money before January 1st.
And then, should we ask, before relocating Sebastian River High School's marquee, should we ask them, do you intend to expand? Because then we'll move it back 2 feet, for example, and then they'll come in and say, oh, you have to move it again.
Yeah, I know where I have to move it. And
Okay.
we're in the right-of-way right now, so I've got to move it out of the right-of-way back onto our property.
Got it, okay.
If for some reason they were to encroach upon our property again, they would have to come to us and ask for more easement, and at that point, we would negotiate cost
money.
again to do this all over.
We'll put you on the job again.
But that's not going to happen. We're just going to move it back onto our property. Essentially, when it was built, like Scott said, in '94, they decided to put it in the right-of-way for whatever reason.
I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the taxpayers for negotiating that. Will that include the cost of the survey, too?
Yeah, they've already done all the survey work and everything else. So
Okay.
they're actually going to stake it off for us, the portion in front of Treasure Coast. They've offered to stake it for us, so I know where to put the new sign. So, yeah, they've got all that work done already.
And when they stake it, you'll have somebody there to make sure that it's staked appropriately?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I've dealt with that, too, where it's the opposite, where they've encroached on
Yeah.
the land that we own. Okay. Thank you.
All right, then the next item, 5-year work plan. And don't usually do this, but I wanted to this time. Michelle Simons is here, who is Michelle, I'm just going to say, you're the guru at getting the 5-year work plan completed, because I have worked on the 5-year work plan since 2003, and it is not easy to balance it. And Michelle I don't know how hard she works on it, or she seems to do it really easy. So thank you, Michelle, for that. So the 5-year work plan is a DOE report, which is set to open next week. That is why we do not have a copy of it. For as long as I can remember, they open it up for like a week and a half, 2-week period for school districts. We have to have that done and submitted and board approved by October 1st. The 5-year planning was the summary was the page 2 and 3 of the capital projects document you looked at. Prioritization of the projects that we've already talked about. Additionally, in the 5-year work plan, you have a space there for 10 to 20-year projections of future projects, which, we just put some generalized projects there. So if something were to come up and we needed to have something new built, then what we would do is the same process we just did with this. We would go to Office of Educational Facilities and ask for a spot survey. DOE would then go in and either approve or deny the spot survey request and update it on our FISH report, and then we would be able to do it. So, for example, if we had a project, a community, housing project come in that has, 4,000 students, and we needed to put a couple of elementaries, a middle, and a junior, senior high, or something like that, then we would just go to OEF and say, look, here's the development, show them all the documents, and they would allow us to do that. So that's why the generalized plans from 10 to 20 years, because we can try to identify or think what we know is going to happen, but in actuality, we can't. So that's another feature that you will see in that document. Also, it goes through our relocatables and gives an inventory of where those are and what their uses are. But this will be open. Michelle will program it all in, and we will have the uploaded final document to you prior to the board meeting in 2 weeks.
Can I say something real quick? This happens every year where they do not open the work plan. This has to be opened by DOE. They have information that they input into our work plan, standard information that they put in. They generally do not open this until a week before we need to have it board approved. So we wish we had something for you guys right now to look at. We did it last year. It's the same thing. So we're not hiding anything. We just don't have it.
But we will provide it to the board as soon as it's open. We'll provide it. We'll do individual briefings on the nuts and bolts, or soup to nuts, as Mr. Bass has said, to seek feedback. So when you're going to approve it, it's not nothing you haven't seen and fully vetted and aware of.
I have a question. IR Prep, alternative school now located at TCTC. If that school, I mean, assuming that everything goes well and it booms and a lot of other kids opt to go into that as an alternative, where would we, I suppose, get monies, or would we pull some rearrange capital funding to open up a new building or to extend or open up a portable somewhere? I mean, in part, a learning question for me, since I have never sat on this board or any other board to open a school building. So where would the funding come from, something like that?
So through the chair, those are not, and Mr. Bass can add on, those are not new students to our school system. They're just redirected students. So it's not an increase of a school system, where typically when you're growing or adding a school, it's because of increased enrollment. This is just a repurposed of school, a classroom.
But it's a different location.
It's a different location where we actually have the space available, and that is one of our opportunities of placing it there was intentional. A, that space was lying dormant during the day, so let's use it. And B, there's programming there in which those students could possibly connect to some of the vocational programming to re-engage them. I think some of our long-term work in looking at alternative education is to continue to grow the numbers, to decrease the numbers. So when I say grow the numbers, it's really kind of setting the expectation as we come on the backside of the pandemic, to ensure that students, the disciplinary piece is to reduce enrollment, where the proactive piece, which is IR Prep, is to possibly grow those, which may be in-school programs, it may be at other facilities, such as the technical college. It may be looking at various wings of middle schools that may not be at 100%. So those are our conversations that we need to kind of dig into over the course of the next several years, really to re-envision what our school system looks like and to be as proactive as possible in serving the needs of children.
So what if it were a vet tech program? What if we were to expand or open up a vet tech program here, or an agricultural program?
So that would be
funding. Where does funding come for that? Is that different combination? Is it different sources? I mean, I'm not sure. I'm just wondering, because
Well, through the chair, so like if you were going to open a CTE program, and it's something that fell within the parameters of Perkins dollars, you could utilize that.
okay.
Obviously, it would be something we could just do this year. It would be something prior to the Perkins grant being completed for the upcoming year or years. So from a program standpoint, you could utilize those. Capital dollars, I think your statement was correct earlier, reshifting around capital dollars. I like to look at it as optimizing your classroom space. Because we're not going to get any additional dollars for that. It's just going to be the money we have now. And that's part of the 5-year work plan is DOE will take your current student stations, compare that to your capital outlay, FTE, which is a number that they come up with is a predictive number. And then, you got to be able to shift that around to optimize your space.
Just curious, I mean, we see a 5-year plan, and in my head, I'm just thinking, if we were to, you can't open up a school overnight. It takes some time, obviously. Would that be something, and you don't have to answer now because you already answered, but in my head, I was thinking, is that something that would be captured in a 5-year plan? In 5 years, this is where, you know, this money, this pot of money needs to go. But thank you for clarifying that slightly.
But just, you know, if we talk about opening up a new school, you know, another thing that we have to work through with Department of Educational Facilities, Office of Education Facilities, is if we have too many student stations still on the books, and we wanted to put a new school in let's say, point A here, and we have too many student stations unfilled, OEF is not going to approve that. So just because if we had the money available and we had the want or the desire to do it, it's got to be feasible because the student numbers have got to balance out.
That's interesting, because if a charter comes in, we can't deny them.
Correct. But
So it's the same thing.
we're in a different category.
Rules aren't
I
the same.
got all 3 heads shaking.
Yeah.
So have we, I
Doesn't seem
mean,
fair.
has a school board, and I don't know, I'm just gonna go out on a limb here, has a school board, public school board, such as ourselves, ever approved for our own charter?
Through the chair, yes.
Really?
Yeah, Miami-Dade has 5.
Miami-Dade has 5. That is governed by the school board,
It's district.
the district board, like us.
No, it is district managed. So it is a charter school that fully is reliant on the school system for its services and support. So they ultimately pay back the school system for services and support.
So Miami-Dade created a management
Board, which is
board,
not the school board, correct?
not the school board.
Correct.
That is so interesting.
Oh, Dr. Jones, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bass. I'm very glad to see on page 10, I believe it is, on the project description, we're looking at media centers and also the PACs at both Sebastian River High School and Vero Beach High School, because both of those, well, the one at Sebastian River High School is over 25 years old with the equipment, and Sebastian's, Vero's a little newer because they built it later, but I'm glad to see that. When we were talking about career in tech, I remember when Ms. Burr and Mr. Lang were here, and Mr. Bass, you kind of hit on that a little bit. You know, we may want a certain career, and we want to look at that, but they go through the DOE again to see if that can be approved, and will it work in our district? We have to get approval. So one of those things, obviously, is, like you said, do we have the students? Do we have the need, and so forth? But I think it's just very important when we look at the project description. Obviously, you are listening to the schools and seeing what they need, and it's prioritized, so thank you.
All right, Madam Chair, that exhausts our agenda. I know it has been an extremely long day. I know we can't talk about the content of our closed-door session with security, but I want to thank all of our local law enforcement agencies for sticking through a long meeting, and giving their feedback to us is extremely important, and us to them, as well as Mr. Teskey and team. Outstanding work. I'll leave that right where it's at, but it has been a long day. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, and with that, we're going to close this meeting at 2:05.